It's good to be back here. Like Simon said, I was with Directa and Endurance for 6 years. So I've worked with Reseller Club, Big Rock, many different brands under the Endurance portfolio. So it's really good to see all you guys out here. All the people at Reseller Club are very, very close to my heart because I spent so much time working with them. So it's good to see the fruition of all of that effort, with the new control panels and then the mobile apps. So very exciting times ahead. So let me just do a quick introduction about myself. So I started out programming when I was in college, and I was writing websites before CSS existed, and back in the era of Netscape and IE. So that tells you how old I am. But so I have experience with full stack development, back end, front end. So I understand a lot of the pain that you guys go through when you're running your companies, right? When you're working with customers. And really, what I'm trying to do today is not to have any specific, let's say, techniques of how to maybe build websites better. That's not the goal of this discussion. Really, what I want to help you understand is how to apply this design thinking framework to help you sort of do better in your business and work with your customers more effectively, right? So this is going to be, originally this was a workshop. I've done this talk before. It was a 3 or 4 hour workshop, so I had to sort of compress it a little bit. So the goals of this discussion today are just going to be an introduction, right? So I'm going to try and help you guys understand what design thinking is, how it works, and then hopefully we talk about some examples where we can talk about how you can apply design thinking in your daily jobs, right? When you're working with your customers and your projects. All right. So before we get started with what design thinking is, I wanted to sort of ask you guys, I'd love some participation from the audience. Let's maybe hear from you about what is your normal process when you are given a new project, whether it's an application, whether it's a website, design or development. Maybe you can tell us how do you start, and then what are the different steps that you guys follow. I'd love to hear from some folks here. Yeah.
First I decide that what is the business,
okay.
Website business. Then I decide according to that.
Okay.
I select which color will suit for that, if the website should be professional or some funky kind of website.
Sure.
Then I make some frameworks according to that. What should be, where I should put services, where I should put blogs and everything.
Okay.
Like that way, first I go for logo.
Okay.
According to the logo, I select the color scheme.
Okay.
Then I decide all the designs according to the business and
Sure.
what is going on in demand according to that business.
Okay.
The websites are going on. I try to differ from that.
Okay. Great. Great. So you start with basically understanding the business of the customer. Then you start thinking about what kind of look and feel the customer wants. Then you work on the logo. Then sort of the sitemap, the hierarchy of the site, and all of that. Right? Anybody has something that they do differently? Any other volunteers? Okay, so I think what you described is sort of fairly standard in the industry, right? So most of the time you meet the customer or the client, you gather some information about the site, figure out what is it they want to build. Then you might plan a sitemap or a hierarchy. Okay, this is the information that the customer wants to present, and this is how I'm going to show it. Then you will do your design, right? So that might include logo, look and feel, color scheme, all of those things. Development, tests, and then maintenance after that, right? So pretty standard process that most of the industry follows, right? Okay, so now what I want to sort of help you guys understand is, okay, there is a different way of doing this, where you basically are building upon a lot of the things that you've talked about, but just applying a framework and potentially getting better results, right? So with that, I want to move to sort of what we think design thinking is. So a lot of us are designers, have been designers, have built websites. What do you guys think design thinking is? Any ideas? Has anybody heard of design thinking here before, actually? Maybe quick show of hands? Okay. Just one person. All right. Good. Any ideas, guys, what design thinking is? Any ideas? All right. Okay, so let me give you the textbook definition, and then I'll sort of talk about what it actually means. So you can read this. It basically says design thinking is human-centered, collaborative approach to problem solving, creative, iterative, and practical. Right. So the words in bold are the most important. Right. So it's this is by Mr. Brown, who is head of the IDEO design firm, right? And he works at Google now. And he sort of was one of the originators of this whole concept of design thinking and this framework of design thinking, right? So basically, it can be summed up in this pie chart, right? Or in this sort of Venn diagram. You've got business, technology, and people, and design thinking brings all of these three things together, right? So it's bringing people, it's bringing your design acumen, it's bringing your technology acumen, and meeting in the center, and building products, building websites, building technology for human beings, right? That's fundamentally the core of the design thinking process. And feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. So the next part is basically, this is high level, what the design thinking process actually is, right? So I'm going to talk about each of these steps in detail, but at a high level, it's 5 steps, left to right. The first one is empathize, right? This is where, the first thing, like what Simran mentioned when, they were working on the control panel or building the mobile app, right? She talked, the Reseller Club team talked to a lot of you out here, right? So understand the customer. Right? So you have to empathize with the customer, understand the customer's problems and their needs. Then you need to figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? That's the second step, define. Right? So a lot of times, we actually end up solving the wrong problem, right? We're solving something that doesn't exist, right? Or it's not a very important problem. So it's very clear, it's very important to have a very clear understanding of what is the problem we're trying to solve. The third part is ideate, right? And this is where design thinking is very different. So this is where you sort of use brainstorming techniques and ways to think about alternative solutions to the problem. Then prototype, which is, a lot of you guys will be familiar with this, using wireframing tools, maybe just sketching on a piece of paper, putting together a quick working prototype, and then testing, right? And this whole process is iterative, right? That's what I want to sort of drive home is you might go through prototype and test 5 times because you might not be right or you might not have the right solution the first time around. But the idea is to go through this process quickly, right? Based on the empathy that you build with your users and your customers. So let's go into each one of these in detail, right? So the first one is empathize and really to understand the user, right? So when you are working with a customer on building a website or building an application, a lot of times you will talk to a client, right? You will talk to your client and say, okay, what is it you want me to build? The client will give you a requirements document, or they might just write it down on a piece of paper. But it's very important to actually understand who are the client's customers, right? So you're building a website not for the client, you're building a website for the client's customers, right? Ultimately, if the client's customers are happy, then the client will be happy, right? So whatever the goal is of that customer, right, or of the client, right? I want to sell more of X, or I want to improve traffic to my brand or to my website. You need to understand who are the people who are interested in that client's business, where are they coming from, right? So it's very important to build that empathy, right? And it's important because a lot of times we assume we know what the problem is, or we assume the client knows what the problem is, right? And a lot of cases where the client is not right. The client is not always right, right? So it's important to basically step beyond the client and the customer, or your immediate customer, and talk to the people who are actually the customers of the client, right? Let me give you sort of some techniques, or so how do we build empathy, right? It's very important to first seek understanding, right? So you need to be very, very open-minded. The best way I have found in my experience, like at Process for example, we talk to customers, 5-6 customers at least on a weekly basis, and I probably talked to like 100 or 200 customers in my last few months there, and there's nothing that builds understanding more than that. Speaking to your customers, right? So in your case, speaking to your client's customers, maybe understanding who is visiting your client's business, right? And it's important to assume the mindset of a first-time user, right? So a lot of times when you're talking to customers, you might be like sort of saying or be judgmental about what they're saying, right? You don't want to judge; you just want to like listen, right? Think of yourself as a child who's just asking questions. You're not sort of processing. You're not judging their responses. And one of the best techniques to do this is actually use the 5 whys, right? So every time you ask a customer or you're interviewing somebody, you can just keep asking why. And you keep asking why, okay, so the first question would be, why do you want this website? Right? And they might say something. And then you can say ask why again, and ask why again. So when you get to the 5 whys, you might actually get to the root of why the customer wants what they want, right? It's a very simple technique, works every time. Right? And it's very, very open-ended, because you might actually come up with insights that you weren't thinking about, right, or you weren't expecting. And the goal is to make this as open-ended as possible, right? You don't want to go with a very, structured multiple choice questionnaire when you talk to a customer. You want a very open-ended interview process, right? So hopefully when you've done this, right, this is the first step of design thinking. Hopefully when you've done this, you've built an understanding of what the customer's problems are, right? So who are the people who are visiting the customer's website? What are their objectives? What are they trying to buy? What are they trying to understand? And with this empathy and with this understanding, you can move to the next step, right? Which is, are you actually solving the right problem, right? You might start with an assumption when you talk to the client the first time around, but that assumption a lot of times will actually change, right? Because you realize that the problem you're trying to solve originally is not the right problem, right? And I'll give you some examples of sort of what that is and how that can make a difference. This is one of my mentors and my idols, not mentor, one of my idols. Steve Jobs said that if you can define the problem correctly, then you almost have a solution, right? A lot of times we build bad products because we are solving the wrong problem, right? So it's very important to define the problem correctly. So let me give you a few examples. It's helpful to, when you've gone through your empathy building process with the customer, to actually frame your thought process in this way, which is user plus need gives you an insight, right? So define who the user is, right? And then understand who the user's need is, right? What the user's need is, which hopefully you build through the interviews and data that you have gathered. And then come up with an insight based on that analysis, right? So let me give you an example, right? So this is a very famous example where basically there were these people, designers, who were trying to figure out, okay, how do we sort of help build an incubator for poor moms in rural areas, right? So there were a lot of, let's say, premature births, and they needed to build incubators, right? But there wasn't, hospitals weren't close by, and a lot of times what they found is that even though there was a hospital nearby, mothers were not taking their babies to the incubators. They felt more comfortable with the baby at home, right? And what they actually realized, they realized is after they're talking to the moms, is that for them it's very important the baby actually is very close to their body, right? Like it's always there physically with them. So they were not comfortable leaving it in an incubator in a hospital, right? So it led to an insight that we need to build a portable or a sort of low footprint incubator so that mothers can always have the babies with them, right? And at the same time, the baby is protected, right? So you start with a very different problem statement saying, okay, how do we get mothers to go and put their babies in incubators? And then you end up with a very different solution because you reframe the problem based on your understanding of the customer and the use, right? Here's another very, very famous example. So P&G in the US, right, which is like HUL in India, they sell a lot of consumer products, right? So they started with this objective that we sell floor cleaners today, right? And they said that this business is not growing fast enough. So we need to make a better floor cleaner, right? Like Lysol or whatever you have, right? Phenyl you have in India. So they said we need to make something better. So they said let's come up with a new chemical composition or chemical formulation to make a better floor cleaner. But then what researchers in P&G said is, no, let's actually go and spend some time with customers, right? So they actually went and stayed with their customers. And they realized that for a lot of women in the US who are working at home or who are basically home workers, that it's very important that the kitchen floor always be clean, right? And the process of, if the kitchen floor is clean, then they felt like the whole house was clean. That's one insight they gained, just by spending time with them. And the other thing they realized is that the actual process of cleaning your floors is very, very dirty, right? You have a mop, you have water, you have soap. So you're spending a lot of time, your clothes get dirty, right? So they realized that, okay, we need a way for moms to simplify the cleaning process, right? So that they don't have to get dirty every time they want to clean the floor, right? And they realized that cleaning the kitchen floor is very, very important. So they actually came up with a disposable mop, like a sticky, sort of disposable sticker, which you can just paste on this mop, use it, and then you can throw it away, right? So initial problem statement was we need to build a better, or we need to make a better floor cleaner. And then they, spent time with users, they built a new insight, and then they came up with a completely different solution, right? Because the problem is completely redefined, right? So that's what we're talking about when we say building empathy and redefining the problem. Any questions here at this point? Either I'm doing a really great job or nobody's understanding what I'm saying. So, all right. Let's move to the next step in design thinking. So we talked about building empathy. The second step is obviously to define the problem, right? Now we're talking about ideation, right? So how do we've defined a problem. So we know we want to solve a particular problem, right? Now how do we come up with solutions, right? So there are a few sort of techniques, right, that we can use in terms of brainstorming and ideation, right? So think about it this way, right? You guys are all web designers, web developers, right? So you spend some time with your clients, customers. You have an idea of what the problem is that you're trying to solve, right? And you're like, okay, most of us, we have enough experience in the industry, so we're like, okay, I know how to solve this problem. This is what I'm going to do, right? Now the problem with that is that you're always sort of, while it's maybe good in a lot of cases, in some cases you're not exploring alternative solutions which might be better, right? And that's all we're trying to do with ideation, right? It's just say, okay, you have 10 options right now. Can we come up with other options instead of just the 10? Instead of choosing from the same 10 options every time, can we come up with more interesting options, more innovative options, right? So that's why we want to do this ideation step in design thinking. Right. Okay. So before you do ideation, right, it's very useful to think about framing your questions, right, in a how might we format, right? So a lot of times we might say, can we do this, right? Can we build a website, I don't know, which loads in 1 second, right, or something like that. The problem with can, using the word can, is implicitly it sort of puts a question mark in your head. Can we actually do this? I don't know, right? Versus if you say how might we, then you're actually thinking about the solution, right? You're saying, how can I make a website which loads in 1 second, let's say, hypothetically, right? So it's important to be able to use these how might we sort of question framing methods. And, so let's say you use the same example as the Swiffer, the disposable mop, right? So they might have said, okay, their initial problem statement might be, how do we make a better cleaner, right? Now their new problem statement was, how might we make the cleaning process easier, right, for women at home, right? So when you frame the statement that way, then you're opening yourself to many other options and solutions which you might not have thought about. Instead of just making a more effective floor cleaner, you're actually thinking about changing the entire cleaning process altogether, right? So it's very important to define the problem statement in a way that you leave yourself open to other solutions, right, and not just the ones that you have thought about before. Share some more guidelines. Go for quantity, right, when you're doing brainstorming, right? So don't evaluate. It's very, very important when you're brainstorming with your team that you don't judge what the solutions or the ideas might be, right? Initially, you want to just get ideas, get more ideas. The crazier, the more interesting, the better, right? And resist the urge to judge or say, no, that's a bad idea. What are you thinking? You're crazy. Make sure you collect all these ideas, right? So make sure that you have a structured brainstorming using these how might we questions, using the problem statements that you define clearly, right? And then select with intention. What that means is that as you now start thinking about, okay, I've got 100 ideas, now I need to come back to 10, right? That seems promising. Make sure that you select ideas. Don't just settle for safe choices, right? A lot of times we're like, yeah, this makes sense, let's do it. It might be something that puts us in our comfort zone, but it might not be the best solution or the most innovative solution in that case, right? So it's important to not to settle for safe choices, and think about things that excite the team, right? You will sense a level of excitement when you discuss an idea, right, with your team. So if you feel like you're excited about it and your team is excited about it, then why not pursue it, right? Why not at least think about how we can implement that idea, right? And don't just discard it because it seems ambiguous or it seems like too difficult to do at this point. Any questions, guys? No? Moving really fast. I think we're done early. All right. The next step. So we talked about empathy, defining the problem, ideation, and then prototype, right? And a lot of you guys have already done this in your work, right? You build wireframes all the time. You build design sketches all the time. So the whole point of design thinking is to get to prototyping quickly, right? And basically get ideas out of your head onto the physical world, right? So you don't want to just keep thinking about ideas in your head and not have anything to show for it, right? And it's a quick way to validate that you're building the right thing, right? Versus building the thing right? And it's important to also understand what the resolution of the prototype is, right? So maybe at the early stage of your project, you don't need to have like a high fidelity web design ready, right? It's a good way to, let's say, go to your customer, go to your client and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, right? Based on our analysis, based on our understanding of your customers, based on the problem that needs to be solved. Here is a very, very low fidelity prototype, right? Maybe it just contains, for a website, the flow, right? Maybe the main flow of the website. If it's an e-commerce site, like the first 2 or 3 steps. And how will products be shown without too much detail, right? Because you want to make sure that you're validating very quickly, right? You don't want to go too much into the wrong direction and then come back and the client comes and says, no, this is not what I was thinking, right? So the idea is to validate these prototypes quickly, right? And why, right? Why do we want a prototype? One is to gain empathy, obviously, right? So as you build the prototype, you'll start understanding the flows better, right? Like a lot of times as a product manager, I've realized I might build like a 10-page product spec, but until I get to building a wireframe for that product or building the flow for that product, I don't really understand it. Like I don't understand, oh, this is not going to work. Because once I start sketching it out and sketching out the user flow, I realize that this is not going to work, right? So it's very important to start the prototyping process to gain empathy. And it's a way to explore, right? It's a very quick way. If you just, a piece of paper and pen is all you really need to prototype. So it's a quick way to explore versus writing down options. It's easier to just sketch them out. Solve disagreements, right? So a lot of times your customer, if you're working with a team, somebody might disagree with what you say. Let's put it out on paper. Let's see what makes sense, right? And start a conversation, because sometimes one prototype might lead to a very different idea, and then you might have something completely different. So it's very, very helpful to sort of get this prototyping process started quickly. And the last stage of design thinking really is to test, right? So it is critical that this process be iterative, right? So what that means is that when you've got your first set of prototypes, right, and you need to figure out, okay, am I going in the right direction, right? It is important to get these prototypes in front of customers, right? Especially in the field of web design, we have a lot of great digital tools out there which allow you to build interactive, clickable prototypes, right, without actually having to build the software behind it, right? You can make dummy buttons and you can make them do things which are not actually happening in the background, but it gives the customer a feeling that something is happening, right? And it's a great way to test your concepts out. So here are some sort of guidelines, right, for testing your site. So the first is that you have to let your user experience a prototype. So when you sit with a customer or your client and you ask them to click through the prototype, don't explain to them what the site is, right? Don't explain this is what you do, this is where you need to click. You need to help them, or you need to let them figure it out for themselves, right? And you need to observe, what are they doing? Where is the mouse moving, right? Are they like moving the mouse all over the place? Are their eyes moving all over the place? Are they not able to understand what they're supposed to do on this website, right? And have them talk through the experience. So when you're sitting with a customer, as they're going to the website, have them talk, think out loud, right? So they're like, okay, I just entered this page. I'm looking to buy a t-shirt, so I can see a listing for t-shirts. I'm going to click here. So as they talk through the experience and you're recording it, you will realize, okay, what is the thought process that customers are going through when they interact with your website and your design, right? Observe, obviously, and follow up with questions, right? So this is very, very important, right? So a lot of times you're like, okay, let's say the customer is struggling with something, then stop them and say, okay, why are you struggling with this? Why don't you understand that this is where you need to click to complete your purchase or to complete your payment? And get that insight from the customer right then, right? And it's very, very important also sometimes to ask them, okay, how did this website make you feel, right? Let's say you're going for a very playful vibe with your website, right, for your brand. And when the customer comes to the site, you should ask them, okay, how did you feel? Like, did you feel like what I wanted you to feel, right? Like, I wanted you to feel like this website is playful, it's being very funny and it's very casual, or did it feel like it was very serious? So it's important to sort of ask customers, how are they feeling when they go through the experience, right? For example, with the mobile app or a control panel for Reseller Club, right? It might be very important, because you guys are doing this as part of your jobs, that it's important the flow be as simple as possible, right? So the goal of the app should be not to be in your way, right? It's to help you do your job, help you buy a domain name, help you buy your hosting products, or renew your domain names very, very quickly, right? So maybe they're not doing too many fancy things on the app, right? The goal is to make it very, very simple, a very simple flow, right? So it's very important to understand, okay, are you guys actually experiencing that? Do you feel like it's very easy for me to interact with the app and purchase this domain name or renew this domain name? All right, some parting thoughts. So I'm just going to go back to this design thinking process. So let me just sort of go through this one more time, right? So empathize. So this is where you need to spend time with your customers customers, right? So if you are building a website for a client, you need to understand, okay, who are the customers who are visiting my client's website? What do those customers want? What are the customers' problems, right? If my client is selling something, what is that thing, what problem is that thing solving? If my client is selling, I don't know, like some software, what problem is that software solving for that client's customers, right? Then define the problem statement, right? So you might have an assumption in the beginning, a hypothesis that this is the problem we need to solve, but go back to the drawing board and understand that, okay, based on your conversations with your customers, did you actually think that you were solving the right problem, right? And make sure that you are solving the right problem, because if you solve the wrong problem, then your entire product is going to fail, right? Once you've defined the problem, then you need to get into the ideation stage, right? So there are many brainstorming techniques I talked about, and the idea here is to come up with new alternatives and not choose from existing alternatives, right? And it's a very it's a crutch that we all go back to, right? People who work in the industry for a long time, we all build, humans are pattern recognition animals, right? So we have patterns in our head. Okay, if it's this thing, then I need to do this. If it's this kind of site, I need to do this. So we end up just building the same kinds of sites or following the same kinds of patterns. So sometimes it's helpful to break out of that pattern and follow this divergent sort of thinking process and brainstorming process. Prototyping, like I said, right, very, very important to actually build it, right? The focus is on building stuff, not to think, oh, will this work, will this not work, right? You don't want to get into analysis paralysis, right? Like spending too much time trying to figure out whether this is going to work or not. Just get in front of users, right? And the only way to do that is to build a prototype and get it in front of customers. And test, right? So you need to know, am I in the right direction? Am I heading in the right direction, right? And in our case, we have great analytical tools, right? So you have Google Analytics, you have tools like Mixpanel, Hotjar, where you can see heat maps, you can see click maps. So you can build a prototype. You can even take a recording of the entire session, right? So you can see where is the customer clicking, where is the customer's mouse going, and understand, is my prototype actually doing what it's supposed to do? Cool? That's it. I'm done. You guys can go to lunch early. Thank you. Any questions, guys? Yeah.
So you have explained all the 5 steps quite elaborately. So don't you think that it? Okay, and so for this, certain amount of effort, time, and budget is needed, right? Always we might not have that, right? So do you think do you have any step down version of this, or something or any of these steps which are absolutely essential when we are having a time and budget constraint?
Sure. So I think there are some alternatives, right? So in some cases, you're right. You shouldn't apply design thinking process to every project that you get, right? You need to be able to understand when should I apply this and when should I not. When it comes to things like understanding the customer, one of the best tools, because we work in the digital space, it's very easy to get analytical tools implemented, right? So you can look at, let's say you're doing a website redesign, you can look at analytical tools and say, okay, how are customers interacting with the website? Instead of maybe having to spend a lot of time talking to customers, you could do that quickly. And within a day, you could have some analysis and insights about how are customers using the site, right? But I think one of the crucial steps are actually to understand, number one is the customer empathy. And defining the problem. Like if you haven't defined the right problem to solve, then no matter what you do, no matter how fancy your design is, your website is not going to work, right? Or your application is not going to work. And prototyping and iterating, it can happen very quickly, right? People this process has been implemented at Google, so people have built products at Google in 5 days. So they start Monday and they finish this whole process on Friday, right? So if Google can do it in 5 days, and it's a small team, right? It's like one designer, one engineer, one product manager. They will collect feedback and they will get this information together, and then they'll do this whole process in sort of 5 days, right? So it's important that you obviously play around with how much time you're willing to spend on a project, right? But I think defining the problem part is very, very important. And the brainstorming again is like 1 hour or 2 hours, right? You just grab a couple of people from your team who have already talked to the customer or worked with the client. You can even include the client in the brainstorming process. It just maybe requires 1 or 2 hours to get those ideas out there, right? So this doesn't mean like you spend 1 month on the process, right? You can do it in a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. And we've done it in like 1 day at ProjectStack. We've done this process for a couple of features we're building. We've done this whole process in 1 day. There is obviously some prep work required, right? Because sometimes you might need to get data You might need to understand customers, right? You can't build that understanding in one day. So you might need to spend a little bit of time beforehand, but you can go through this whole cycle from empathy to testing in about a day.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thanks, guys. See you later.